Have you ever been hurt on the job or wondered what your rights are if you were injured at work? Well, workers by law are owed compensation if they're injured while on the clock. But how much? Well, that's determined by the judge after considering a number of factors. And here to explain how it all works, we have attorney Rick Piloponis from the Higgins Firm. Jim, welcome back to More at Midday. Rick, glad to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
Substituting in for Jim today.
I am.
You say there's not a specific dollar award for some of those specific injuries. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
There's not a... when someone gets injured, they don't necessarily have, hey, you have a shoulder injury, this is worth this amount of money.
Right. Okay, so let's talk about some of the legal factors that are involved. Because there are 7 of these we're going to go through.
Okay. The first one is the impairment rating. Every injury that you have, there's a guide to the evaluation of permanent impairment. It's a book that doctors use, and they use that book to determine, hey, this is the range I can assign to this injury.
Okay.
And it'll all fit into an equation that the comp law will take into consideration to figure out how much your injury is worth.
Exactly. It's a long equation. So let's go ahead and do the second part of this. Restrictions and limitations caused by the injury.
Yep, that's kind of obvious. If you have restrictions that aren't going to make you able to work or aren't going to make you able to have other transferable job skills, then you're going to have, then your injury is worth more because you're limited more.
Okay, you want to hit on the third one?
Sure, third one, this is probably the most important one, whether the employee made a meaningful return to work. If you have not gone back to work for your employer, then you need an attorney.
Okay.
Because that's going to be one of the main factors on figuring out what your case is going to be worth more, because you're going to have a little extra component that's built in that they probably won't tell you about.
Now let's talk about the employee's age and their education. Where does that play a role?
All these factors play a role in determining what your employability is after your injury.
After the injury.
So age is important because, if you're 50, you're not likely to go back to school to learn some new trade.
And it's going to be harder to be hired by someone else.
It's going to be harder to get a job, harder to maintain the same work and job that you had.
Exactly. Now you also say the employee's average weekly wage.
That's one of the components that goes into figuring, that's one of the factors that goes into figuring how much ultimately your comp case is worth.
Okay. Also, the employee's working skills and their training.
Also goes into what you can do in the future. If you're trained to be a welder all your life and now you can't do that, you've got a lot of skills and training, but you don't have anything that's transferable.
Right. And finally, local job opportunities.
Yeah.
What's available? What's out there? Who's hiring?
That'll determine on how employable you are.
Quickly, I wanted to hit on this because there are some other variables as well. You say including past experience, maybe with similar cases, the need for an independent medical exam, that type of thing.
That's it's always important. You don't know how this doctor. When you just go to a doctor, you don't know what his past history is as far as what kind of impairments he gives, whether he gives on the low end of the impairment scale or whether he gives on the high end of the impairment scale.
Okay.
It's nice to have somebody look at it who's seen that doctor before and who knows what the system looks for.
And finally, you say the client has to decide whether to accept a settlement, make that counter demand, or to present the case and take it to court.
Absolutely. It's always going to be up to the client. They're always going to have the last say.
Interesting. Good information for a lot of folks out there. Rick, good to have you back on the show. Thank you for your time. Hey, you can reach the Higgins Firm by calling 615-353-0930 or log on to the More at Midday section of our website at WSMV.com for a link to their website.